People adding baking soda to their water, saying it improves their exercise performance, acid reflux, energy levels, and a lot more.
Before you use baking soda again, you need to hear this, because one of the most common products found in almost every kitchen might not be as harmless as you think. It's used for baking, cleaning, deodorizing, even personal care. And because it's so simple and familiar, most people never question it. But here's the part no one really talks about. Not all baking soda products are the same. Some are processed differently, some are sourced in ways that raise concerns, and others may contain impurities or quality issues that most consumers don't even think to check. And the scary part is, you're not just using it in your home, you're often using it around your food. Now, to be clear, baking soda itself isn't the problem. The real issue comes down to quality, sourcing, and how it's handled before it reaches your kitchen. Because when something is used as frequently as baking soda, even small differences in quality can matter more than you think. And that's exactly why this matters. Because most people grab the cheapest option on the shelf, assuming it's all the same. But what if it's not? What if some brands cut corners, use lower grade processing methods, or simply don't meet the standards you expect? Today, we're breaking down 8 baking soda brands you may want to avoid using. And some of these might surprise you because they're widely available and commonly trusted. But before we jump in, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because I post videos exposing everyday products you might want to think twice about. Let's get into it. 1. Arm & Hammer Baking Soda. Arm & Hammer is easily the most recognizable baking soda brand in the United States. It's everywhere. Grocery stores, kitchens, cleaning aisles. And because of that familiarity, most people never question it. In fact, many people assume that if a brand is this popular, it must automatically be the best option. But here's the part most people overlook. Popularity doesn't always equal purity or quality. One of the biggest concerns surrounding Arm & Hammer baking soda is how it's sourced and processed. While the brand markets itself as a trusted household name, baking soda itself is derived from mined materials. And depending on how that material is extracted and refined, there can be differences in purity levels. Most consumers never look into this. They just assume all baking soda is identical. But in reality, sourcing plays a bigger role than people think. Another issue is multi-purpose positioning. Arm & Hammer promotes its baking soda as a product that can be used for everything: baking, cleaning, deodorizing, and even personal care. But here's where it gets questionable. Not every product is necessarily optimized for all those uses at the same level of quality. When something is designed to serve multiple purposes, it often becomes more about versatility than specialization. Another concern is perception of food-grade quality. Many people use this baking soda directly in food without questioning whether all batches meet the same standard consistently. While it is labeled as safe for consumption, most consumers don't consider the level of refinement or how it compares to more carefully sourced alternatives. That gap in awareness is where concerns start to appear. Another factor is industrial scale production. Large brands operate at a massive scale, which means efficiency and cost play a major role in how products are produced. While this keeps prices low, it can also raise questions about whether quality is always the top priority. And when a product is used so frequently in both food and household applications, even small compromises can matter over time. 2. Bob's Red Mill Baking Soda. Bob's Red Mill is a brand that many people associate with natural, organic, and high-quality food products. It has built a strong reputation by positioning itself as a healthier alternative to mainstream brands. So when people see baking soda under this label, they automatically assume it must be better. But here's the reality. Even brands with a healthy image deserve a closer look. One of the biggest concerns with Bob's Red Mill Baking Soda is assumed purity based on branding. Just because a product comes from a company known for natural foods doesn't mean every product in its lineup is significantly different from standard alternatives. In the case of baking soda, the base ingredient is still a processed compound, and the differences between brands may not always be as clear as the marketing suggests. Another issue is consumer perception versus actual difference. Many people choose this brand thinking they're getting a superior version of baking soda. But the question is, how much of that difference is real and how much of it is based on branding and expectation? Without clear distinctions in sourcing or refinement, it becomes difficult to justify the assumption that it's a higher quality option. Another factor is price versus value. Bob's Red Mill products are often priced higher than standard brands. While that can sometimes reflect better sourcing or production methods, in the case of baking soda, the added cost may not always translate into a meaningful difference in performance or quality for everyday use. Another concern is limited transparency on processing details. While the brand emphasizes natural and simple ingredients, most consumers don't have access to detailed information about how the baking soda is sourced or refined compared to other brands. That lack of clarity makes it harder to fully evaluate what you're actually getting. Another issue is health halo effect. Because Bob's Red Mill is associated with healthier products like whole grains and organic flours, that positive image carries over to all of its items, including baking soda. This can create a false sense of security, where people assume the product is automatically better without questioning it further. Another important point is functional similarity. At the end of the day, baking soda performs the same basic role across brands, and unless there are clear differences in purity or sourcing, the practical benefit may not be as significant as people expect. 3. Clabber Girl baking soda. Clabber Girl is a brand that has been around for decades, mostly known for baking ingredients like baking powder. Because of its long history and presence in grocery stores, many people assume it's a reliable, traditional choice. And just like other older brands, that familiarity creates trust. But here's the reality. Just because something has been around for a long time doesn't mean it meets modern expectations of quality and transparency. One of the biggest concerns with Clabber Girl baking soda is legacy trust without modern scrutiny. Many consumers choose it simply because it's familiar or because they've seen it for years. But most people don't stop to question how the product is sourced, processed, or how it compares to newer alternatives that focus more on purity and transparency. Another issue is limited brand focus on baking soda specifically. Clabber Girl is primarily known for baking powder, not baking soda. That means baking soda is not necessarily its flagship product. And when a product is not the main focus of a brand, it raises questions about how much attention is given to maintaining the highest possible quality in that specific category. Another factor is lack of detailed sourcing information. Just like many mainstream brands, there is very little easily accessible information about where the baking soda is sourced from or how it is refined. For a product that is used in food, that lack of transparency can be something to think about, especially for people who are trying to be more conscious about what they consume. Another concern is assumption of consistency. Because the brand has been around for so long, people assume the quality is always consistent, but large-scale production can sometimes lead to variations that consumers aren't aware of. And without clear communication from the brand, it becomes difficult to evaluate that consistency. Another issue is multi-use expectations. Like other baking soda brands, Clabber Girl products are often used for baking, cleaning, and other household purposes. But again, when a product is used across multiple purposes, it raises the question of whether it's optimized equally for all of them, or simply positioned that way for convenience. 4. Rumford baking soda. Rumford is another well-known name in the baking world, often associated with baking powder and aluminum-free products. Because of that reputation, many people assume that all Rumford products, including baking soda, automatically meet a higher standard. But here's the part most people don't question. Does that reputation actually carry over in a meaningful way, or is it just branding? One of the biggest concerns with Rumford baking soda is the association effect. The brand is widely recognized for aluminum-free baking powder, which gives it a cleaner image in the minds of consumers. But baking soda, by nature, doesn't contain aluminum in the same way baking powder can. So the advantage people think they're getting may not actually apply in the same way. Another issue is branding influence on perception. Because Rumford markets itself as a more clean or traditional baking brand, consumers often assume that its baking soda is somehow superior. But without clear differences in sourcing or refinement, that perception may be driven more by marketing than by actual product quality. Another factor is lack of visible differentiation. When you compare baking soda products across brands, they often look identical. Same texture, same function, same use. And without detailed information about how each brand sources or processes its product, it becomes difficult to identify what truly sets one apart from another. Another concern is consumer overconfidence. When people trust a brand's reputation, they are less likely to question it. That means fewer people look into details like sourcing, processing, or quality standards. And that lack of questioning can lead to assumptions that may not always be accurate. Another issue is multi-purpose positioning again. Like most baking soda products, Rumford baking soda is used for both food and household purposes. And once again, that raises the question of whether one product can truly meet the highest standards across all those uses. or if it's simply marketed that way for convenience. 5. Great Value Baking Soda, Walmart brand. Great Value Baking Soda is one of the most commonly purchased options simply because of its price. It's cheap, widely available, and sits right next to more recognizable brands, which makes it an easy choice for most shoppers. But here's the reality. When something is priced significantly lower, there's usually a reason behind it. One of the biggest concerns with Great Value Baking Soda is cost-driven production. Private label products are designed to compete on price, which means keeping manufacturing costs as low as possible. And while that doesn't automatically mean poor quality, it does raise questions about how much focus is placed on sourcing and refinement compared to premium alternatives. Another issue is minimal transparency. Unlike some brands that try to highlight their sourcing or production standards, store brand products often provide very limited information. Most consumers don't know where the baking soda comes from or how it's processed, and that lack of detail makes it harder to evaluate the overall quality. Another factor is consumer assumption of equivalence. Many people believe that all baking soda is exactly the same, so they choose the cheapest option without hesitation. But when a product is used in food and around your home, even small differences in purity or processing can matter more than people realize. Another concern is quality consistency. Large retailers source products from different manufacturers over time, which can sometimes lead to variations in consistency. While most consumers won't notice this directly, it's still a factor worth considering when choosing a product used frequently. Another important point is perceived savings versus actual value. While you may save a small amount up front, the real question is whether you're getting the same level of quality as other options. And without clear transparency, that's something most people never actually verify. So while Great Value Baking Soda may seem like the smartest financial choice, it comes with trade-offs that aren't always obvious. And once you start thinking beyond just price, it becomes clear that cheaper doesn't always mean better. 6. Kroger Baking Soda. Kroger Baking Soda is another store brand option that many people pick up without thinking twice. It's convenient, affordable, and available in one of the largest grocery chains in the United States. But just like other private label products, it raises some important questions that most shoppers don't consider. One of the biggest concerns with Kroger Baking Soda is generic sourcing. Store brands often rely on third-party manufacturers, which means the product you're buying may not come from a single consistent source. And because this information isn't always clearly communicated, consumers are left guessing about where their product actually comes from. Another issue is lack of brand accountability. With major brands, reputation plays a big role in maintaining quality. But with store brands, the focus is often on affordability and accessibility. That doesn't necessarily mean lower quality, but it does mean the priorities may be different. Another factor is limited product differentiation. Kroger Baking Soda looks, feels, and functions like any other baking soda. And without clear information about how it stands out in terms of purity or refinement, it becomes difficult to justify choosing it beyond convenience or price. Another concern is consumer habit buying. People often grab store brand products out of routine rather than research. And when decisions are made out of habit, important details like sourcing or quality are usually overlooked. Another issue is multi-purpose usage. Once again, like other baking soda products, Kroger Baking Soda is used for baking, cleaning, and more. But as we've mentioned before, a product designed for multiple uses may not always be optimized equally for all of them. Another important point is price-driven trust. Because it's affordable, people assume it's a safe and practical option. But price alone doesn't tell you everything about how a product is made or what level of refinement it goes through before reaching your kitchen. Another factor is lack of consumer awareness. Most people don't compare baking soda brands or look into their differences. That means products like Kroger Baking Soda continue to be chosen without much thought, simply because they're available and inexpensive. So while Kroger Baking Soda may seem like a simple and reliable option, it comes with the same underlying concerns as many store brand products. And once you start paying attention to what's behind the label, it becomes clear that convenience doesn't always equal confidence. 7. Baking soda by pure organic ingredients. At first glance, this sounds like exactly what you'd want. Pure, organic, clean. Everything about the name gives off a sense of safety and quality, and that's what pulls people in. But here's where things get a little tricky. The term organic in baking soda doesn't always mean what people think it does. Unlike fruits or vegetables, baking soda is a mineral-based compound, It doesn't grow in soil the way organic produce does. So when brands use words like organic or natural, it often creates an impression that the product is somehow cleaner or safer, even if the actual difference is minimal or unclear. And that's where perception starts replacing understanding. Another thing most people don't look into is how these smaller or less known brands handle sourcing and refinement. Bigger brands at least have consistent production systems. But with lesser known labels, that information isn't always easy to find. You're trusting the label without seeing what's behind it. Then there's packaging and storage. Some of these niche brands focus more on branding than long-term practicality. Packaging might not be as protective against moisture or air exposure, which can affect how the product performs, especially in baking. And that's something you only notice after using it. There's also the issue of assumed superiority. Because the branding feels premium, people tend to believe they're getting something better than standard options. But without clear differences in sourcing or refinement, that assumption can be misleading. It feels like an upgrade, but it might just be a different label. So while products like this may look like the smarter choice, they rely heavily on perception. And once you separate the wording from the reality, the difference isn't always as clear as it seems. 8. Ener-G baking soda. Ener-G is a brand that's often associated with specialty and dietary-focused products, especially in the gluten-free and allergy-friendly space. Because of that, it carries a certain level of trust among consumers who are trying to make more conscious choices. And that reputation plays a big role. When people see a brand connected to dietary needs, they automatically assume everything under that label meets a higher standard. But here's something most shoppers don't stop to think about. Not every product in a specialized brand lineup is fundamentally different. Baking soda, by nature, is a simple compound. So when it's sold under a specialty brand, the expectation is that it must offer something extra: cleaner sourcing, better processing, or improved quality. But that expectation isn't always clearly supported. Another thing to consider is how these products are positioned. Because Ener-G focuses on niche markets, its products are often priced higher and presented as more tailored. That creates a sense of precision, like you're buying something specifically designed for better results. But in reality, the functional difference may not be as noticeable for everyday use. Then there's the trust factor. When a brand builds its identity around dietary safety, consumers tend to question it less, and that's where awareness drops. People stop comparing, stop researching, and simply assume they've made the best choice. It feels safe, so it must be better. But that kind of trust can sometimes bypass important questions about sourcing, refinement, and consistency, especially when detailed information isn't easily accessible. And over time, that lack of questioning becomes habit. So while Ener-G baking soda may come from a brand with a strong niche reputation, the actual product still deserves the same level of scrutiny as any other option. Because once you look beyond the branding, you realize that not everything labeled as specialized is necessarily different where it matters most. Now that you've seen the baking soda brands you might want to think twice about, the real question is, what should you actually use instead? Because the goal isn't to avoid baking soda completely. It's to choose options that focus more on purity, better sourcing, and consistency. So let's shift from what to avoid to what you can trust. Safe brand number 1, Anthony's Premium Baking Soda. Anthony's Premium Baking Soda is often seen as a cleaner, more transparent option compared to many mainstream and store brands. And one of the biggest reasons for that is its focus on food-grade purity and minimal processing. Unlike many bulk-produced alternatives, this brand emphasizes a more refined and controlled approach, which gives consumers more confidence in what they're using. One of the key advantages here is clarity in positioning. Instead of heavily marketing the product for multiple uses like cleaning and deodorizing, the focus is more on food-grade applications. That alone makes a difference because it shows the product is intended with a more specific purpose in mind. Another important factor is ingredient simplicity. With baking soda, you're dealing with a single compound, but how that compound is processed matters. Anthony's focuses on keeping the product clean and straightforward without unnecessary additions or confusion around its use. Another benefit is consistent quality control. Smaller, more focused brands often pay closer attention to batch consistency, which can lead to a more reliable product over time. And when you're using something regularly in your food, that consistency becomes important. Another point is consumer transparency. Compared to many store brands, Anthony's provides a clearer sense of what you're getting. That level of openness builds builds trust, especially for people who are becoming more conscious about what they bring into their kitchen. Another advantage is less emphasis on mass production. Because it's not positioned as the cheapest option on the shelf, the focus shifts slightly more toward quality rather than just affordability. And while that may come with a slightly higher price, it also reflects a different production approach. So while Anthony's premium baking soda may not be the most common option in every store, it offers a more focused and quality-driven alternative for people who want a bit more confidence in what they're using. Safe brand. Number 2, Frontier Co-op Baking Soda. Frontier Co-op Baking Soda is another option that stands out for its approach to quality and sourcing. Known for its commitment to natural and responsibly sourced products, this brand has built a reputation around transparency and consistency, and that extends to its baking soda as well. One of the biggest strengths of Frontier Co-op is its focus on sourcing standards. While many brands provide little to no detail about where their baking soda comes from, Frontier Co-op emphasizes responsible sourcing practices. That added layer of attention helps differentiate it from more generic options. Another important factor is clean and simple formulation. Like any baking soda, the ingredient itself is straightforward, but the way it's handled and presented matters. Frontier Co-op focuses on maintaining a clean product without unnecessary processing or added complexity. Another advantage is brand philosophy. Unlike many large-scale producers, Frontier Co-op operates with a more values-driven approach. That includes a focus on sustainability and product integrity, which adds another layer of trust for consumers who care about how products are made. Another key point is consistency and reliability. Because the brand maintains a strong focus on quality, users often experience consistent performance across different uses, whether it's baking or other household applications. Another benefit is reduced reliance on mass market production shortcuts. While this may result in a slightly higher price, it also means the product is less driven by cost-cutting measures and more focused on maintaining a certain standard. So while Frontier Co-op Baking Soda may not be as widely recognized as some mainstream brands, it offers a more thoughtful and quality-focused alternative. And once you start prioritizing sourcing and transparency, it becomes clear that even simple products like baking soda can have meaningful differences. Before you grab your next box of baking soda, just remember this: not all products are as identical as they seem. Something as simple as baking soda is used in your food, your kitchen, and your daily routine. And that makes quality more important than most people realize. The difference isn't always obvious, but once you start paying attention, it changes how you shop completely. If this video made you think twice about something you've been using for years, hit that like button because it helps more people discover this information. Share this with someone who uses baking soda regularly and has never questioned it. And if you want more videos like this, exposing everyday products and helping you make smarter choices, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because sometimes the smallest things make the biggest difference.